Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Louise Nichols. I'm a textile artist living in Cornwall, and this is, I think, part 3 of the Birdhouse stitch along. So in this video, it's quite a long video. Well, it will be quite a long video because there's an awful lot of running stitch on the Birdhouse. So excuse me. So yeah, it will be quite a long one. And I'm also going to talk a little bit more about French knots. And this time I promise I will refer to the other colourways, which I hadn't done in the previous videos. So apologies, apologies again for that. I hope you saw that little extra bit that we uploaded to YouTube just to confirm about the different colours. Okay, I hope you enjoy this one and thank you for watching. Okay, so there's only one French knot used on the birdhouse, and that's the eye of the bird. And I did say I would talk to you a little bit more about the needles, didn't I? About the needle I use. So this is a straw milliner needle. It's the same width all the way down. I couldn't tell you what size this one is, but it's got a, I don't know if you can see that on the video, but it's got a decent sized eye, which means that I can get this. It's not a really thick thread, but it goes through quite nicely, and it holds in there fairly well as well. Generally I do my French knots with a size 8 thread. It was only because the 8 was out of stock that we'd use the sewing thread when I did the let me find it, the eye on the bird in the previous video. But I just wanted to show you doing it with the size 8, the needle that I would use, just in case that helped you out a little bit. So come up where you want your eye to be. You can mark that with a pen first if you want to, and depending on the size of the eye, you know, if you want a larger eye, I would go around a couple of times. A smaller eye, just go around once. That's really up to you. So I then hold the thread. Let me move that out of the way. There we go. I hold the thread in my left hand, needle in my right hand, as I'm right-handed. Round once, twice, and then I position the needle so it's going back in almost where I've come out. You don't want to go back through the same hole because that will pull the thread through. So almost where I've come out, I put the tip of the needle there, and then that knot, which I've kept quite taut, I slide down to the base and then push my needle through like that. Okay, and then you can carry on and do exactly the same as I showed you with the sewing thread, and do those 3 little stitches on the beak of the bird, or make the triangle and then fill in the middle bit like that. So I'm going to show you again with the French knot. I'll just finish this little triangle. And one in the middle there, look, for that will probably do. Doesn't have to be completely solid. I turn it over, and then I do that tying off on the back like that. So I'm just going to do one on the side here just to show you. Again, if you want a slightly smaller eye, so come up and just go around once. Okay, so I go over the top of my needle, put the point of the needle almost, not quite, not where I've come up, but just a couple of, I mean, it's really a couple of threads away from where I've come up. Once I've got that point there, slide that knot down and then just push the needle through like that. And then there's your knot, and then tie off on the end. Okay, so I hope that's helped with French knots. I think people either love them or hate them, don't they? If you don't want to do a French knot, you can always use a little bead for the eye there. Okay, Right, so the rest of this video then is about running stitch, and there is a lot of running stitch on the birdhouse. So on your stitch diagram, it's where all these lines have kind of dashed, all these dashy lines are, okay? And it adds a lot of texture to the print, the running stitch. Okay, right, and as promised, I'm going to tell you the colours on the other colourways as well, instead of forgetting all about it like I did with the couching. Okay, so we're going to start on all of the in all of the kits. It's thread number 6. Okay, so with the grey one, it's this lovely kind of burnt orange. So we're going to start with that one. So if you have the blue kit, it's the pale blue. Oh, it's not a pale blue, is it? It's sort of a mid blue, very similar actually to the blue that you've used for the couching. And on the green, it's this sort of slightly paler leafy green. Now, again, I'm not going to use mine off here. I'm going to, in fact, I've already measured some out. I'm going to use mine off the reel. And if you get your colour image out, you'll be able to see where those kind of orangey lines are. So they're the ones that we're going to be doing first. And there's also some, no there isn't actually, I'm telling you a lie. No, it's just on the bird. There's none of the pale orange on the extra leaves, okay? So where are we? Yeah, there's none on these. This is the kind of, when we get to this sort of colour. Right, let's make a start. So all I'm going to be doing is just following what's on here. So some of the running stitch runs on the edge of the print, and some of it runs just inside the print. And then as we get a little bit further on, some of it is on the outside of the print as well. So I'm just going to start at the top here. And I've done on my original sample, so we'll stick to that. I've done one across the base there. And then I've done a row running right on the edge of the print there. And then right round the outside of the leaf. When it's on a curve like this, I don't tend to do too many in one go, maybe just 1 or 2 stitches. Whereas if you were doing a straight line, you'd probably be able to do a few more. And then you can see on the, so that's this one here. And then we're going to do a little row just inside as well. So I've got 5 stitches there. So I'm coming just inside that line that I've just stitched. So just a couple of millimeters there. And I'm going to do, so I'll probably fit about 5 stitches in there again. And then I'm going to do my knot on the back while my thread's still in the needle. And then I'm ready to go again. Get my scissors. So I'm going to move on to the next one here. Now that doesn't have one on the, well it does, but in a different colour. It doesn't have this burnt orangey colour on the outside. There's just a row on the inside of the leaf with that one, so that's what I'm going to do next. So, and again, there's about 5 stitches I've done there, so I'm just coming on the inside of the print and tie off again. If I will do a couple of knots there. So going back to the original, there's one here, some of that colour there, on this leaf here, this one here, this one here, this one here, and then hiding underneath this one, look, there's a couple of stitches there as well. So I'm going to do all of those now. So that's all the leaves done, and then the other bit using this colour thread is a line of running stitch that just goes underneath where you've done the couching, underneath the roof of the birdhouse. So you can see it on your stitch diagram here. And where the running stitch runs on the edge, again, you can kind of see this kind of dashed line here. Okay, so I'm just going to go, again, it's a couple of millimetres in there. And then when I get to the top there, I'm going to do one stitch there, come out ready to start again. And that stitch then is, again, just a couple of millimetres in from there. And then back down on the other side. Take my needle out for this one. So keep that knot nice and tight on the back, and then snip. Okay, right, so that's all the burnt orangey colour. And next is thread 7. So on, again, on all of your colourways, it's thread 7. And so for the grey one which we're doing, it's this sort of pale pinky mauvey colour. On the green birdhouse, it's this very kind of pale, almost beigey green. And on the blue, it's what I call like a winter white. Okay, and we're going to be doing all the running stitch that is actually on the house itself, all these lines going up and down. There's also in this colour a row around the outside of the bird, but I'm going to start with the birdhouse itself. Now again, on your stitch diagram you can see where those lines are. If it helps for you to mark this with a fabric pen, then that's absolutely fine. I'll show you how I it doesn't matter if they're not quite even, but I'll show you how I sort of position mine to try and help with those, getting those lines sort of quite even. So let me get my needle threaded up. My needle as well, I don't know if I said, it's quite a thin needle with quite a long eye, but quite small. I like a long needle. I don't seem to get on with short needles very well. I think it's what we get used to, isn't it, really? Okay, so the lines up and down. So what I do, there's one on the outside edge there, so I'm going to start by doing that one there. So we're right on the edge of the print like you were with some of the other sort of burnt orangey ones. So I'm going to make my way down this edge here. And then rather than doing the row that goes next to it next, I do the middle one. So I'm just sort of gauging where that middle is, which is about there. So I'm not right on the bottom of that print, I'm just coming up, again, probably a millimetre or so inside, and you can see there that if I carry on that row, that's roughly down the middle. And then I'm just sort of judging this by eye really to try and keep fairly central as I'm doing this row of running stitch going back up. And then when I come back down this side, I'll do the one between those two rows that I've already done. Sorry, I think I nudged the camera with my nose then. Okay, I hope you can see that there. Back in there, and then from that point, and I'm not going to take the threads behind the bird, I'm going to now work on this bottom section here. So I'll do that outside edge again. So I caught it with my glasses then. So do the outside edge like that, turn it, and then again you're filling in. So I can see that's more or less central. And take it back down to the bottom there. Now I'm going to finish there because I'm almost out of thread, but if I'd got a longer bit of thread I would then come up and start again on this row here. So I'm just going to knot off on the back now, rethread my needle and then start again. I don't really want to take too many threads across the back. I don't really like doing that because I feel that the fabric is more likely to pucker and it can sort of distort it a little bit. So I won't be carrying threads across the back of the bird. What I'm going to do now is work on this bottom section, then bring the running stitch up here, and then I'll carry on back along this top section and then fill in where we've started that row there. So back onto this outside edge here. And then again, as before, position my needle so it's sort of fairly central there. Back up the middle of those there. Bit of a knot there. That's it. Turn it round. Back down on that edge. Turn it round. And then fill in between those two lines there. Okay, now on this bit you've got quite a few little obstacles there, so just do what you think. I'm going to show you now what I've done on mine, where I've done the stitches. So I've done two just above there, and I have done another one down at the bottom there, like that. And then I'm not going to do a central line on this one because I don't think I need to. So I'm going to do one there. I'm going to do another one about there. And another one in between those legs, a little bit higher up, about there. Now I'm going to turn it. I'm going to come back down on that edge again there. And then just fill in with a couple more stitches here. Okay, so let me hold that. Hopefully you'll be able to see how I've done that. Okay, and then from there I'm going to start again on this outside edge here. And then we're back to doing a row up the middle. So I think that's about there. Back down between those two rows. Back up on the outside, and then I'll come back down. I'm sure you're getting the idea by now, aren't you? Come back down in between to fill that gap down the middle of those 2 rows. So I'm about out of thread again now, so I'm just going to rethread my needle back up and fill the rest of this in with a running stitch. Okay, almost there, back to where we started. Just a couple more in that row, I think. There we go. Okay, so just tie that off. I love the texture that the running stitch creates. It's like a canvas stitch, isn't it? really, and you get those lovely, when you see it on those lovely Indian hangings, and it creates that kind of like, yeah, well, just the texture, I just think it's beautiful. Okay, and as I said before, there is a line of running stitch that runs around the outside of the bird, so I'm going to do that as well. So I'm going to start actually on the tail here, move that out of the way, and this row, it runs again sort of a millimetre or so inside the edge, okay, just inside the edge of the bird. In fact, on this stitch diagram you can see where it runs, just inside there. Okay, I don't know if that was in shot actually, just inside there. And this is the same colour thread that you've just done the birdhouse with, all the stitching on the birdhouse with. Okay, so that's all of that sort of mauvey colour on the grey finished with, and the next colour we're going to be using is thread number 8, and for the grey it's this sort of purpley grey. For the green it's that sort of burnt orange, and for the blue it's this sort of darker grey here. Okay, it's like more of a bluey grey. So again, I'm going to take mine off the reel, and this colour is used, there's a line under the wing of the bird there, so I'm going to do that first, being as we've got the bird in front of us. And then also we're going to be getting the extra leaves out. There's running stitch in this colour on those, and there's also some on the where are we, on the edge of some of the leaves on the main print itself. Okay, so I'm going to do the bird first, and then I'm going to do the extra leaves, and then we'll come to the birdhouse towards the end. So it runs along the edge of the print, the row on here, if you can see it on the sample there, and again use your stitch guide as well, because that's there to help. So I'm just going to make my way on the edge of the print underneath the wing of the bird there. And that's nearly the bird all finished. Oh, the only other little bit of detail is a few stitches in the wing, so we'll come to that in a minute as well. So I've got plenty of thread there to carry on stitching, so I'm going to knot, just going to do one knot there. Like sometimes I do too many knots on the back, but anyway. Okay, so that's the bird with this running stitch underneath. Now coming back to these, so with these extra ones, there's also, not only have you got this kind of darker purpley grey, but there's also a line of cream running stitch. So when I was stitching these, the way I'd kind of worked it out was whichever way the vein down the middle is going, I was kind of thinking that the curve, the outer curve, would almost be where the highlight was. So wherever the cream goes down the edge there, so on this one it will run here, and then obviously on this one here and here, and the same on the bottom row as well. The cream always falls on the outside edge where the sort of open curve is almost like a highlight, if you think of it as like a highlight, and then the darker thread is on the opposite side, and there are 2 rows of that. So if you think that the highlight's going to be here, we're going to do the dark thread on this side here. So again, the first row is right on the edge of the print. And then there's another row that sits just inside that row there. Okay, so you'll probably get 5 or 6 stitches there. So again, you're coming in just a millimetre or so, a little bit down from the tip of the leaf. And then I'm going to tie that off. Don't carry any threads across because you're going to be cutting these out, and your thread will all come undone if you've carried threads across. Okay, you don't want that to happen. So when the vein down the middle is curved that way, this would be the highlight. So this is the side that I want the darker thread. So again, I'm going to go up the outside edge there. And then again, come just inside there and do a row back down the edge there. So I'm going to carry on and finish all of these and then bring you back in for the detail with this colour on the birdhouse itself. So that's all the leaves stitched, and now we're going to add that little bit of detail onto the birdhouse itself. So I'm going to start at the top here. So there's a row on the outside edge of this leaf here, running right on the edge of the print. Again, you can use your colour image to help you see where those different lines, different coloured lines of running stitch are. Oh, hang on, pull that. And then I've got a couple of, I've sort of gone along the base of that leaf there and done a couple of stitches there as well. So let's do those. Tie off. So the next leaf round is this one here, coming out the side here. So again, I've got just a row going around the one side of the leaf and a little one, excuse me, a little one just on that edge there. So I'm going to start there with this one. And then a couple on the little stem bit of the leaf, and then around the outside edge. Tie that off, and then the next one is this one here, and so that's this one. You can see one a row down the edge there, and then I've got along that edge there, and where else? I think the last one yet is just that edge there. So I'm going to do all of those now, and then that's the that's all the running stitch in this darker colour. Almost forgot. There's a little row of running stitch on the inside of the hole on the birdhouse as well. And that's using that darker thread. And also, as I was stitching this, I noticed I'd carried on down onto the edge of that little stem there and a couple of stitches down there. So the dark thread there, it doesn't only go around the edge of the leaf, it carries on down that little stem. Okay, and that really is the end of the darker thread. Right, so the next one, so on your thread holders, the next one is this thicker thread. So this is a 16 that we've been using. I tend to do all my running stitch with a size 16 thread, but this one is a 20. It's a crochet yarn, but I've got a huge ball of it, look. And sometimes it's really nice if you want a really nice, I just wanted something a bit thicker that stood out, and I thought it would be a good way of using some of that thread up that I've got. So it's the same colour on all of the colourways with this one, look. So it's thread number 9 and it's the same thread. Okay, so I'm using it, this is like a small chenille needle almost. It's quite short actually for me. I was saying, wasn't I don't really like short needles, but for this is okay. It's got a slightly wider eye, so this thicker thread will go through. So we're going to do a row of running stitch along the bottom here in this piece of felt, and then we're going to do some running up the middle of the felt section on the roof, and then there are also 3 little stitches on the wing of the bird, and that's all using this thicker thread. So again, if it helps for you to mark out or draw a line for you to follow, then that's absolutely fine. Now, because this is a thick thread and you're going through felt, I'm doing each stitch individually. I can't sort of go along because there's too much resistance to it. So it really stands out, doesn't it, that thread? And again, it's those, I think sometimes those differing thicknesses of thread, creating texture with them, that's what adds to the sort of overall effect of it all. So I think I'll get 2 more in at the end of that row there. Just give that a little pull, that's it, and then tie that off. I'm keeping my needle in because I've got plenty of thread there to carry on with the next bit. So I'm going to do the roof next. So again, I'm going to kind of judge mine by eye, but if you want to draw yourself a line, if that helps, that's absolutely fine. So I'm coming up, I'm not going right to the edge of the felt, I'm coming up just inside there, about, so I want to try and be fairly central with that. So I'm just sort of gauging by eye, keeping my row of stitches down the middle there. Okay, so that's all the thick thread done as well. So the next colour we're going to be using is the cream. So it's the same across all the colourways again. So it's thread 10 and it's this cream. We're back to a size 16 thread for this. And that is used for, there's a little bit of detail on the bird here. So I think I'll probably do that first, actually, show you that first. And then it's really sort of, again, almost like highlights. So there's some detail on the felt leaves that we've got on the main birdhouse. on the printed leaves on the main birdhouse, and then also on the extra leaves that we've got, we're going to do that highlight, that line of running stitch on that edge there. All right, so I'm going to start with the bird. So let me get threaded up. So I'm back to my small, so it's almost like a straw milliner needle. I don't think it is a milliner, but it's quite a thin needle. So there are 5 little stitches on the, almost sort of on the, going down towards the breast of the bird, all right? And the first one comes in line with that top row of couching. So I'm going to do the first one there. And again, if it helps to mark this out first, then do. So I'm not going as far as the running stitch line on the edge there. I've just come in a millimetre or so, and I'm not going right up to the couching either. I'm taking it in about there. Okay. And then the second one just sits underneath that. So I'm going to go in for the end of that stitch and then cross over at the back so my needle's ready to do the next one after that. So again, in, cross over at the back, in, cross over at the back, and then you're ready to finish off. That's your 5 little stitches on the bird. Okay, do my little knot on the back. That's all the detail finished on the bird now. But let me just show you that again. Okay, and onto the leaves. So not my thread ready to go. So this line, this sort of highlight, I'm not stitching on the edge of the print this time. I'm just stitching on the inside. So it's a couple of millimetres in, and it's just a row of running stitch that goes all the way up that side of the leaf. Okay, you see that there? And again, don't carry your threads over because you're going to be cutting these out. So I'm going to carry on, finish the leaves, and then I'll bring you back in to do the next lot of running stitch with this cream thread on the birdhouse. So I've stitched all the highlights on these leaves now, and I just want to talk to you about snipping these threads off. So I'm making sure that these are really short on the back. tell you why in a minute. So I'm just really making sure that all my ends are cut as short as they can be. The thin thread's not too bad, that doesn't matter too much. But certainly these thicker ones. And we trimmed when we were doing the veins, we trimmed those right down anyway, didn't we? I think I said about it then. And on the bird as well, make sure there's no thick thread. And the reason for that is, in the next video, we're going to back this with fuser web, which is a bit like Bonder web. And if you've got any threads that are sort of, when you iron it on, if they're laying where they overhang the edge of the bird or the leaves, you'll get a little ridge. Now that might not bother you, but it irritates me, so I don't want it on my on my piece of work. I mean, you probably find it will get lost once you do the blanket stitch around the outside. You probably find it'll disappear, but I just like to keep it nice and as flat as possible. So I like to get rid of all those ends so that when I iron it on, there shouldn't be anything too sort of bulky showing around the edge of the leaves. All right. Okay, so they're all stitched now as well. So we can pop those aside with the bird. And it's just now adding some of those highlights on the leaves on the main print itself. So again, you can use your stitch guide, you know, your stitch diagram and your colour image as a guide to this. But I'm just going to add, so again there, where you've got two leaves together, you could do this in one go. So if I start with this one here, so I'm going to do 2 stitches in the felt leaf here. And then I'm going to take the thread down and do a row just inside, a little bit like we did with the extra leaves, a row of running stitch on this edge here. And I'm going to tie off. Just remember as well about not taking threads across, because we're going to be cutting that shape out, I think, in the next video. So there's a line down, a line of running stitch down the edge of that leaf there. Not right on the edge, just coming in from the edge. Yeah, I can get another, I'm going to use that little bit, get another leaf out of that. I'm going the opposite way around, aren't I, this time? So this felt leaf here, that's got a little row of running stitch as well. Right, I am going to thread my needle up again this time. Not the end, and then I'm ready to carry on. So next one is this line here. and then the next one is these pair of leaves here. So again, I'll do this one and then carry on with the felt leaf as well. Okay, so I think you get the idea with that, don't you? So I'm going to carry on now and finish adding all these highlights. So I'll just show you where they are. Okay, so there's a line on this next leaf here, an outside one there, and then here I'll do this in one go, so that's on the felt leaf and then coming up on that leaf there. Then there's another row just there and a row on that felt leaf there, and then I'll carry on and stitch up that leaf there. And I think that is all the cream. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, so that's all the little highlights done, and we are finally onto the last bit of running stitch. Sorry, this is quite a long video, isn't it? But as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of running stitch on the birdhouse. I thought about splitting it into 2 videos, but you can watch it in however many parts you want, can't you? Right, so the last bit of stitching is a bit of detail just around the outside of the leaf. So it's on the cream of the fabric, and on your thread holder, it's the final thread, which is thread 11. The rest of this is going to be used for doing the blanket stitch, thread 10. But thread 11 is for doing this little bit of detail around the outside of some of the leaves on the main print. So on the grey version, it's this sort of peachy apricot colour. It's also on the green, it's a peachy, it's the same colour, a peachy apricot colour, and then on the blue one, it's the grey right at the bottom. So thread 11, and it's a size 16 thread again. So if I get my needle threaded up with that. And again, use your stitch diagram as a guide for this. I'll just pick that up in a minute. Let me get this threaded up. So on your stitch diagram and on your colour image, it's wherever you see these lines of running stitch, they're all in this colour. So wherever you see those lines around the outside of any of the leaves here, that's using this colour thread. If you want to add more in, you can. I perhaps should have done a line here as well, look, because that's quite empty there, isn't it? There's a bead that's stitched into that little place, that little gap there. But you know, if you want to add some extra lines, if you've got enough thread left over, you can do. You don't have to just do them where I've stitched them. Right, so I'm just going to bring that back over to this side and make a start. In fact, I'm actually going to use, rather than using this as the guide, because I've stitched these leaves on now, I can't kind of see where I've gone to behind there. So I am going to use my stitch diagram. So I can see I've done a row all the way around this bottom leaf here. So we're coming out a couple of millimeters from the edge of the print, and again, if it helps to draw a line so you get you know, a stitch line that's an even distance away from the edge of the print, if that helps, then do that. Can't pick the needle up. There we go. And then back down. On the other side. And there's none of this thread anywhere else around there, so I am going to tie off. And then do the next leaf up, so which is this one here. So the ones that have the stitching around the outside, it's this one, this one, this one, and this one here. Okay, so I'm going to do that now and then bring you back in. Okay, so that's all the stitching finished now. Hooray! So I've done all the lines around the outside. I think there were 5 leaves that had that extra stitching around the outside. I added an extra stitch in there that isn't on the stitch diagram, and then realised that it is actually on the colour, it will be on your colour image on there. So you may find out there's a couple of stitches on one that's not on the other, and vice versa. Not to worry. And as I said, if you would like to add extra stitches, that's absolutely fine as well. So the next video is going to be putting the backing on and cutting out the shapes. So there's a piece of heavyweight interface, I can't say it, heavyweight interfacing, iron-on interfacing in your kit. So that's going to go on the back of the bird, and then we're going to use the fuser web and the felt to back the whole thing and cut them out. So thank you once again for watching. It was a long video, that one, wasn't it, with the running stitch? But I hope you've enjoyed it. I think running a stitch, it's a very therapeutic stitch, isn't it? It's sort of got that lovely rhythmic quality to it, which is really nice. And it creates some beautiful texture, as well as adding the detail as well. So I shall see you next time then. Bye.